So that time has finally come. U.S. officials have told us for many months to expect the worst. Expect threats and attacks here on U.S. soil. Well, guess what? It is now coming. We are now starting to see more reports, more updates, and more threats here on U.S. soil. I'm going to break down what's going on and how there were 5 states that were impacted just today. Just today. That is huge. So I'm going to break that down in just a moment. All I ask is one thing. Takes 2 seconds. Go ahead, hit that like button, and let's begin. Now, it is no secret the United States has many problems. We have a border crisis. We have an issue with Russia and Ukraine. We are now kind of supporting Israel as they're still attacking Hamas in Gaza. There's conflicts with Iran and other countries in the Middle East. Right? The list goes on and on. But something happened today that impacted 5 states, and actually 5 state capitals. 5 state capitals were evacuated after bomb threats. Yeah, 5. All today. This morning, 5 states, their state capitals had to be evacuated simply because of bomb threats. Now, the states included Georgia, Kentucky, Mississippi, Montana, and Connecticut. Okay, those are the 5 states. Now, here's the problem. And this is something that law enforcement has said that we are going to continue to find these and have to investigate these different threats. Some are going to be credible, some will be non-credible, but they have to investigate them. Here's the problem. Right now, the United States is hitting new records. We're hitting new records with the amount of illegal immigrants entering into the United States. We had over 300,000 just in December alone. But there's something else that we're hitting a record on, and we're going to touch on that in just a moment. But it has to do with what is coming on January 19th. On January 19th, the U.S. federal government will shut down unless they get an extension of the government funding bill. That is something that Congress is going to start working on this coming week. But there's not some people are concerned that they aren't going to be able to come up with an agreement. They won't be able to negotiate a deal. Well, this is why. Because now we know the U.S. national debt has surpassed $34 trillion for the first time. It just happened today. And I want to show you how quickly this is going up. Just look at this right here. This is the U.S. debt clock. You can see over here on the left-hand side, this is the U.S. national debt, over $34 trillion. Okay, $34 trillion. That is $100,000 per citizen or $264,000 per taxpayer. That's a lot of money. And that is something that lawmakers are looking at. Well, what is coming up? Well, here's the problem. Lawmakers are going to look at this growing debt number. And they're going to see that and they're going to be really concerned. Well, here's the problem. Right now, there are a lot of discussions of seeing cuts, especially now that President Biden just last week signed an executive order that is going to give federal workers a 5.2% pay raise. That's a pretty substantial raise. Well, they're going to get that 5.2%. That's already locked in. Well, the problem is now Congress has to figure out a way to include that 5.2% increase of pay into that government funding bill, which has a cap of $1.59 trillion. That's going to be difficult to do. And so what we're hearing from lawmakers is that they're going to have to make cuts elsewhere. Some of those cuts could be to things like local law enforcement, potentially the FBI, Homeland Security, could be the Social Security Administration, SNAP benefits, housing, schools. The list goes on and on. Well, look at this. Just the other day, it says FBI and local law enforcement are investigating a non-credible threat against Central Oregon schools. Now, why would we even bring that up? That's not it was non-credible. Here's the reason why. if we see a decrease to law enforcement, doesn't matter if it's FBI, Homeland Security, local law enforcement, doesn't matter. If we see a decrease in numbers, guess what? Some of these threats against schools, against our state capitals, like what happened today, right? Some of these threats are going to go uninvestigated. We are not going to be able to investigate them because we do not have the numbers. Think about that for a second. This is why officials believe 2024 will be the year of threats against the United States. This is including non-credible bomb threats like we saw today. Good news is these buildings, these state capitals were swept. There was no evidence of a bomb. There's no threat whatsoever. So after an hour or so, everybody got to come back in, and the evacuation was lifted. Okay. Well, there's still threats against U.S. troops abroad and here on U.S. soil. There's still threats against U.S. embassies. We've seen this before, right? I don't know if you remember this one, but this was back on October 25th. It says threats made on social media against U.S. military bases in Kuwait, right? But also on embassies. This was issued by the U.S. Embassy in Kuwait. Guess what? There's a threat to the U.S. Embassy in Kuwait as well, right? The threats don't stop. And then on top of that, this year we have a presidential election. Some are saying this will be the most controversial election we have ever had in 2024. The most controversial election. And I don't know if you remember the last one, and the one before that, and before that. There was controversies in every single election we have had for decades. It doesn't stop. And some say 2024 will be the most controversial election we have ever had in our history. That's scary. But as all this stuff's happening, we are continuing to see investigations into these threats. For instance, the FBI, they were investigating a threat directed at the Colorado Supreme Court justices after they ruled in favor 4-3 to ban former President Donald Trump from being on the ballot. Yeah, there were threats to them as well. So this isn't going to stop. The concern right now is the threats to the United States are only going to increase in frequency and in intensity. Some of these are just, they are a little bit upset, gonna light a fire in front of the courthouse, which, don't do that. But lighting a fire in front of the courthouse is much different than taking the life of a Supreme Court justice. That's a huge escalation. And so again, don't do any of those things. But this is what the FBI is now saying, that these threats, whether they're credible or not, they'd have to be looked into. They have to investigate them a little bit to ensure the safety of the American people. And the other problem is we are now getting more and more people here in the United States. Just over the past, over the past 3 years, since the Biden administration has come into office, we have seen over 12 million people, illegal immigrants, enter into the United States. Okay, in the past 3 years. That is the size of like Ohio, I believe. So just keep that in mind. 12 million people have entered into the United States. And these include people that we know about, that we have caught and released. And this also includes gotaways. People that have entered into the United States and we didn't even realize that they did. So it's a concern right now that there's more people entering into the United States. We do not know who they are, exactly where they're from, what their intentions are, which does put more responsibility on the United States. And again, I bring this up because these threats that are happening inside the United States, some are saying just takes one. Takes one lone actor to pretty much commit an act of terrorism. And this definitely will hurt the United States and the American people. All I can tell you is be prepared, because they are now telling us that 2024 will be the year of threats against the United States. So, as we get more updates, we get more information, I promise I'll fill you in on all the latest news and updates. All I ask is two things. First, go ahead, hit the like button on this video if you enjoyed today's update. The second thing, click that subscribe button and tick that notification bell so you never miss an update. And I will see you guys on the next one.